Welcome to Are We the Only Ones? I'm Kathy, and today we have to update on Pam Bondi congressional hearing testimony about the Epstein files. Wow, what a circus. There was a moment where she literally called Representative Jamie Raskins like a washed up lawyer or something like that. And I was like, first of all, that is unbecoming of any official government hearing, especially congressional testimony for oversight over the Attorney General's office. The Attorney General is supposed to be representing the people of the United States, not the president. So her protecting the president is actually the wrong client. So understanding that. Now, based on the way that she reacted when Representative Ted Lieu, who used to represent me when I used to live in Westwood, which also covers Beverly Hills, Holmby Hills. So it's like the richest of the rich of Hollywood. So for him to be actually taking her to task, and these people live in his district, is something that nobody actually seemed to put together. But the man who actually represents these people is being more responsive and showing a contrast of how the last 30 years, the people in Florida, for instance, were providing cover, right? That were like Acosta. Bondi herself was actually, I believe, the AG of Florida at the time. She was apparently the AG of Florida when Casey Anthony trial was going on. And for Zimmerman and Trayvon Martin. So not a great record in terms of, like she's in the same realm as, like the O.J. Simpson team, So it's weird though, because she's the AG for the United States and should be bringing cases like the people of the United States versus Donald Trump in regards to January 6th, sedition, treason. But she ended up getting masterfully cornered into committing perjury by Representative Ted Lieu, who is a former JAG officer. JAG is the Judge Advocate General, is what it stands for the military, which is their lawyers. And now, she did officially commit perjury. Whether or not they're actually going to charge her with perjury and then do that whole, which they should, because if they don't, then what they're doing is the exact same thing Merrick Garland did, which was to not file charges when he had the power, had the evidence, had every right to, and only didn't because they didn't want it to look political, which at that point, it's like, it's more political that you're not doing it because there was a real legitimate crime that had been going on and a real legitimate cover-up. And to me, that sort of proves the point that the Democrats are soft on crime. But that doesn't negate that the Republicans are also soft on crime because they were committing the crimes, right? They were accessories. They are actively covering up the investigation and not helping in any way that would be how you behave if you were innocent and you were actually trying to get justice for the people of the United States. Thomas Massie, Representative Thomas Massie is the only Republican that basically made it his mission to support the Epstein victims and survivors, and Representative Khanna as well. So I would like to throw out at this point that we consider Representative Khanna and Representative Thomas Massie as a viable presidential ticket if they were to run together. I would have to say, though, personally, I think Khanna should be the top name on the ticket only because of all the negativity the GOP So I don't really necessarily think the GOP should get the top ticket. However, I do understand we should probably do primary and see who would be the better for the top. Whoever gets the higher, well, there'll be different primaries, right? So they can't be a cross ticket. But you never know. Maybe we could have the first time ever having a cross ticket since. Okay, so in the original, when the presidency used to, in the first inceptions of it, it used to be that the first and second place of the primaries would then combine, but then they would get huge fights. So it didn't, for governing, it didn't work out really well. So that's why we went up with single parties, and you stay with your same party and you pick your running mate. However, maybe now we need more of a hybrid solution where we are more collaborative, and that if we can get a ticket where it's a mixed ticket, in terms of parties, we should prioritize those, because that, I think, if you have a balance of both professionalism and friendship between those two candidates, you could actually have a great collaboration, because you would have maybe hopefully the best of both worlds in terms of governing, where you would have, in an ideal mixed ticket, you would have a candidate that would be able to give as many services to people under the poverty line, while also having the ability to balance that budget so that we don't basically bankrupt ourselves by doing that. However, we've almost bankrupted ourselves going to war, right? So wouldn't we rather take that risk to save people that would then stimulate the economy, because then they would have jobs, they would be able to take care of their children, send them to school, and then those kids would then also do better, join the workforce. Hopefully we'd be able to find some great minds that would be able to solve all of the major problems, because the reality is this. If you want, as MAGA, we want the philosophy, you can't rely on the fact that only white people can be in the pool of candidates to solve the greatest problems in humanity, because that's just not, this is not realistic. We have people right now that are geniuses. There are children that are creating and inventing things like stitches that will change color based on the healing process, and if there's any infections. It's a girl who's Black, and she is something like 14 years old, 13, 14 years old. So we would want to keep people like that out of the pool of candidates to be able to solve things like curing cancer, curing AIDS. I just recently saw that there is a new stem cell inhaling procedure to help repair lung damage. I just saw an article about smoking cannabis as you get older is actually better for you, because it helps expand your memory and your cognitive ability. And I think that if we were to say only white people were able to go into the programs to research and do this stuff, I don't know that we would be able to solve these problems in a more quick way. We would have to maybe wait it out longer. And in the process of doing that, you have all these other countries that would end up moving ahead of us. As of right now, Vietnam is getting a new bullet train, high-speed bullet train system. They've dedicated a significant portion of investment that's coming in from a lot of other countries, and not just Vietnamese cash. There's a lot of cash coming from other countries pouring in there. And so I can actually compare, because I used to go to Vietnam. My first time going to Vietnam was 12, and there was nothing that, like, when you used to have a hamburger, it'd be on a baguette, a round burger on a actual French baguette. So I have been able to see it progress when, like, now they understand what Western food is. They even import the ingredients. Now you have people that are from America. I can think of a specific example of somebody who from America and opened restaurants in Vietnam and is very successful. And so Vietnam is a very international country now. And, you know, I've stayed in the Landmark 81, which is the tallest tower in Southeast Asia. And there's a hotel in there in Vietnam. And so I can compare what technology they have against what we have in America that's like everywhere. And they're starting to surpass us. When I lived in Japan, Japan was already ahead of us. Japan at the time, from 2005 to 2008, already had ATMs where you could put in the cash and it would just scan it and you didn't have to like put in an envelope. And I remember going, what? Like, what is this? And then they also had, I would go to Shiseido and I would go get like makeup matching. And they would literally just take a computer thing and go, boop. And they would just hand me the compact. And I was like, what? And even still now, I can't get matched perfectly in America. So that tells you how technology can progress if you allow for the investment, for the opportunity. And maybe if you have more of a society that's not like so worried about racism and so worried about immigration, so worried about all these like boogeymen, that you can actually unify and move forward with the money that you actually make in your country and like provide amazing services, provide amazing opportunities. Because when you can build a bullet train, you can create jobs. So I just read that there's a mining town that is in deep, dire situation right now. They're very concerned because their mining town just basically lost all their jobs. If we can get a bullet train going from California to DC to New York, those miners could go work building that MAGLEV train. And magnetic levitation train, in case you didn't know what that means. And I've ridden on those trains. I've actually helped introduce sort of the beginning of the concept of bringing that here. And it's been a while, it's like since 2000 we were trying to get these trains here. But the conversations have been going on. And if you can compare the United States to Vietnam and see that how far we're behind, you understand how much waste of time, resources, money we have spent on hating each other. And if you realize who was the one coming over importing that hate, it's people that grew up in apartheid South Africa. So Peter Thiel and Elon Musk. And so I implore everybody to like, now we reset. I mean, I would even venture to say that we should go with a matriarchal society. If we can completely reset, that would be the way to go. Most of the things that we've seen that have been unraveling really have to do with intense need for sexual gratification that I don't know that women have that kind of need. I can't imagine a single woman being so obsessed to the extent that she would create a cryptocurrency market just to trade. Like, I just don't. So Bitcoin has been plummeting. It just dropped to $67,000 for the Bitcoin. I think the high has been 100,000. And when I first checked on it, when the Epstein news dropped, it was, I think it had gone from 70 to 65 and then recovered to 72. And then now it's back down to 67. So it is something to watch. It almost is like the temperature of where society really is, because money talks, right? Follow the money. If the money in crypto starts to tank, society is not accepting this, and there's hope that we can find the balance. But I think what's going to end up happening is France, which is actually my home country. I was born in Paris, France, would be leading the EU to create a new world alliance that doesn't include America. That's crazy. When you come from military, the jokes that we used to make about the French, for me to see the French come out as the leaders is actually a beautiful thing. And it also tells you how quickly things can change, right? Like, wow. Yeah, tell me what you think. The news cycle is, I still can't believe that we have to say the word satanic cabal cult, but yeah, that's real. 330 gallons of sulfuric acid is a really hard one to explain away. And also Steve Bannon he had an apartment, and then when they went to like check to clean, when you rent an apartment and you leave, management comes in. Apparently, he had a jacuzzi tub that was completely destroyed by sulfuric acid. Very suspect, people. This is very suspect. The man was known to not shower or bathe. Do you not recall that Steve Bannon was known for not showering or bathing? So tell me, like, the tub? What? What's going on there? So I also think that it's important to note that Lex Wessner as a co-conspirator should not be a surprise. I mean, the man's name was everywhere. It's like, why did this guy give power of attorney to Epstein? Well, duh. Because he's funding it for whatever reason. But the crazy thing is that Lex Wessner owns Victoria's Secret, Bath and Body Works, Abercrombie and Fitch, and other L brands, which basically means that the man who was funding the most notorious pedophile ring was also in charge of taste making for multiple generations of women and girls. Girls going into prepubescent age were getting their training bras, okay, and then going into Victoria's Secret, going into Bath and Body Works and getting their first like lotions and gifts that you would give when you pass a certain age. You're like 13, 14, you start buying Bath and Body Works, you start giving it as like presents. It's like it's not a rite of passage, but it is just like a shared experience. And then Abercrombie and Fitch, let me tell you, Abercrombie and Fitch was well known as a human trafficking situation because the CEO of Abercrombie and Fitch has gotten in trouble for that. There's also another Instagram account that I follow. He was an Abercrombie and Fitch model. He was trafficked. And he tells his stories about being trafficked as an Abercrombie and Fitch model. So he has great insight on everything that's happening right now because he was basically there. So I really want to just say I love Bravo and I love the shows on Bravo, but there are some stars on Bravo. I'm not going to call you guys out. But you guys are repping for Abercrombie and Fitch right now. I think you need to maybe rethink that. Okay? Abercrombie and Fitch is extremely problematic. I think walking away from Abercrombie and Fitch might be the better choice between the racist past they've had and the human trafficking and now the very current news that they're involved in. I don't know if Abercrombie and Fitch ever had a positive reputation other than having hot model-looking people as their salespeople, which in every scenario where that has occurred that I have ever experienced leads into sexual assault, leads into a form of trafficking. And I think the thing that we've learned from this entire experience is that we should maybe start pulling our money out of these like mass market, mainstream places and literally take that money and spend it into local mom and pops, credit unions instead of big banks. One of my biggest things I am advocating for is family trust, and then you just loan out money to your own family legacy if you can afford to do that, because then the interest goes back into your family trust. You're not paying it out to these banks. We have to take our money and rethink how we spend it because we are funding the worst people in the world. Because it's really hard for a human being, apparently, to have that kind of success and power and money and not be corrupted. There's a very few amount, it's very far between amount of people that can handle that kind of wealth and rich and power. And so it's a great reason to advocate for nobody should have a 0% tax rate. I think that's where we can begin. It's too hard to slice between, well, this group needs this and this group should have to pay that. Let's just do a flat base tax. And then we can do, write-offs and entitlements and things like that. But everybody should have to pay some amount of tax. Unless you're way under the poverty line. something to think about. All right. Pam Bondi. Oh, the point I forgot to finish was Jamie Raskins graduated from Harvard Law. Pam Bondi graduated from a law school that I have never heard of. It doesn't even crack the top 100. I don't know if it even cracks the top like 200. And she told him he was a washed up two bed like lawyer type of thing. Girl, bye. Seriously. I think she should get disbarred at minimum. I think that photo of her smirking while she's ignoring the Epstein victims that were all there and 100% had not seen her is going to be the picture that people will print and like put on her grave when she's gone. It will be the lasting memory and legacy of her life, like forever moving forward. So in the age of media where you have the ability to do these things, it's going to be a very interesting thing to see how all this stuff sort of plays out, how people reconcile their own legacies with what they've done. Everybody that's MAGA, this is not just the administration. If you're still on the MAGA side, within the next like 3 to 5 years, you're going to be such a pariah. Like you will literally not be able to go anywhere without, not just in the United States. Like if you travel, it'll be even worse. Even worse. If you travel and you tell people, if you even tell, oh my God, like, cause you're going to be the new Nazi. That's literally what it is. And it's just the reality of what has happened. So take care out there. You can change now. It's never too late to be somebody who decides like, okay, enough is enough. I'm not continuing on with this like satanic worshiping cult. Like they duped me, but they didn't dupe me because I'm an idiot. They duped me because they're rich, like beyond rich, like creating markets rich. That is a justification that you can actually sit with and be like, none of us stood a chance. Okay. But you can change. So if you're still MAGA, you can change now. There's certain things that I can understand. Look. If you didn't like the Bad Bunny Super Bowl performance, I can empathize. What was great about it for me was production, set, cinematography. That was awesome how beautiful it was. But can I understand? I'm not a Bad Bunny, apparently, music fan. I didn't recognize a single song on there. And I don't speak Spanish. And I could appreciate that. I was like, oh, if I was going to create like something for Puerto Rico, Puerto Rican pride, because I used to live in a Puerto Rican neighborhood in Brooklyn. I definitely have sugarcane to represent their agricultural contributions, and definitely bodegas, and definitely salsa joy. And I didn't know that there was going to be a taco. I don't know if it's a stand. I think it might be like a storefront. But anyway, in Highland Park, there's this taco place, and that was the taco place that was represented there. And apparently now they have lines around the block, which is amazing. Because I was going to go, but now I don't want to wait on the block. But, you know, that's exactly what you want for mom and pop. Like, that's what I'm talking about. And then the casita thing, I'd already seen it from previous concerts, like with John Hamm being there and John Hamm being there again. So it was like, it was kind of like a callback. So in the sense where it was the same as like when Usher did his show, and there's probably some things that he had like for Vegas that was like the same, but I'd never seen them before. So the Usher one was like all brand new to me. And for when Bruno Mars was on there with Coldplay, like it made me feel like, oh my God, like it made me want to like get his album, right? And I think when Rihanna's was, I still can see the pictures, like how everybody in unison in all red, and then and in all white, and then like her in red, and then like it just made me feel a certain way. This didn't make me feel like as those did, but I understood all the Easter eggs. I think I missed a few, but for me, I can understand. I was like sitting there going, if people don't like this, I can understand why. I can understand exactly why they don't like it. It wasn't necessarily like it didn't do what sometimes Super Bowl halftime performances do, which is drive you to go, then you have to hear that music again the next day. I have to find out what that is, because it wasn't like they let viewers who didn't know his music know exactly like what the song was. But I can appreciate now there was like a moment where I guess he said in Spanish, America is actually what you want. And then that's when he cut to Lady Gaga. And so that actually is pretty genius. But of course I missed it because I don't speak Spanish. So there's things that I'm sure that were very, very, like if I had understood all of it, would make it more effective for me, even though I was on board. But if you're trying to reach people that don't understand that, I don't know if it like got them the way that like you could have taken the opportunity to get them. But that's okay. It's not necessarily like you're doing it for them, right? But when you have a platform like that, for me, I'm looking at how does it make me feel? Does it change the way I think about that artist? Does it compel me to buy their music? Is it something I'll remember? Like every Super Bowl, it'll be like, oh, I remember that. This is one of the great ones. This is the other great ones. It's like that. But at the same time, I loved the coloring. I could tell. I was like, did they use a different type of camera? Like, what kind of film is it? Because it was like a beautifully lit visual when I'm watching it, right? But I was kind of waiting for the music. And I think mainly because my favorite Super Bowl was the one with 50 Cent and Snoop. And that made me feel, but of course I connected to that music, right? I've like grew up with that music. That is like my genre of my favorite music. So that's also where my bias comes in. I would rather see hip hop and rap at the Super Bowl than any other genre of music, including like hard rock. You know what I mean? So because I just prefer my genre of music necessarily, like, because I didn't understand. And that really, it's really like, I'm sure if there was music that I didn't understand, but the music, the melodies and the beats, like, got like, made me feel some sort of way. Like, the good question would have been, would people have been as mad if it was like a K-pop group? If BTS had done the Super Bowl, would MAGA have been as mad? If, I don't know, let's throw another one. If the K-pop Golden song, if that was like, if they had been biggest song of this year, right? Like, what if they had been chosen? Would people have been as upset with the conversations? Because that would be even more foreign, right? Because Puerto Rico is actually American; they're American citizens. So, just curious what you think. Just reflect. You can comment. You can respond in comment sections in Substack or YouTube or wherever. But just think about it. I was just curious. What do you think? All right. Give me a like, subscribe, follow on Substack, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. And feel free to comment. I'm having great discussions on YouTube. There's a lot of discussions over there. That's pretty nice. And tell me where you're unplugging from and unsubscribing from. Professor Galloway has said that the best way for us to boycott would be to unsubscribe from big tech. And I agree. And I started deactivating some accounts in my Instagram. I have like a lot of different profiles because I have different niche things I was uploading for. And I started to deactivate a couple of my accounts. And I'm just going to start dwindling down into maybe my largest number of accounts and just focus on those just to get the word out and stuff. But I'm going to be posting differently. I'm not going to be posting in real time if I go places for security reasons. I just realized now like how much you have to just be aware of the world and what's going on. So yeah, tell me if you're changing the way you're spending your money. Tell me if you're moving differently in the world. Tell me how you feel as a woman with all this news and if it's triggering to you, if you feel like you're relieved that the veil has been lifted, or if you would have rather sort of been blissful in your ignorance. It's like, do you want the red pill or the blue pill? Right? It's kind of like that. All right. Until next time.